Alright guys, HyDra here again today. I hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. In light of OpTic's victory this past weekend, FormaL has now given his thoughts on exactly what it took to get them over the line. Shutting down aBeZy was a big one. The absolute vibes that Pred was bringing to the camp in addition to Shotzzy's energy on the championship Sunday, but also giving lots of credit to Kenny. Joining this roster, their results so far this season have been third, second, and now first. There's no doubt in FormaL's mind that Kenny is not just a great player, but ideally the perfect player in some ways for this particular roster. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, we've got some Rostermania stuff to discuss. Vivid is back competing. Vivid stepped away for some time after being cut from the Minnesota Rocker. Kind of surprised at the time that they cut him rather than benching him, because they could have benched him, potentially brought him back if things weren't working out. You look at the team now, do they need Vivid back? Arguably yes, I would at least consider it. Now Standy has come in and done a good job. Like, is Standy the perfect player for that team? I wasn't convinced they should have made the change at the time. I think they honestly should have just made a one-man move for Big Wake, to be honest. But I thought that Vivid Linz duo was working rather well. I was surprised at the Linz change, or the Vivid change out. Linz stays, and Linz has now fallen off to some degree. Is that because he doesn't have Vivid? I think that's probably part of it. So, but the thing is, right, because Standy's been the better performing of the two SMGs, you're not bringing Vivid back in for Standy, are you? But he is competing again, is the key thing. The reality is, though, that we expected, probably I thought by now, some sort of further roster rumors as to what might happen over the coming days here, because today is Friday, next Friday is the first day back again of the qualifier matches for Major 4, which is coming up, next month in Burbank, California. So the teams basically have a week if they want to figure out what they're going to do, and if they were going to make changes, probably, by now we might have expected something to occur. And despite the fact that Vivid is back a few days ago, is he going to be, called straight back up again? I think arguably he could be. So, now Mac isn't actually playing. So Mac stepped away as well at the start of the year. This is Mock instead. So, Mock is different to Mac, and as Vivid says, I wish it was Mac. So, my bad. Now Mac stepped away at the start of the year. He was going through some personal stuff, and I don't really believe that he's made the return yet. Solid player, of course, and champion on that Seattle Surge team back in the Vanguard days, but, of course, now he's stepped away. Difficult to make a return, but Vivid now having made the return, people will be talking about him, and the same would be true I think for Mac as well. This however is the new Seattle Surge roster, and they've done rather well this stage. aBeZy, by the way, it was actually a 99 rated for the ARs in the hardpoint category for hill time, so he had the most hill time per 10 minutes of all the ARs in the game this stage, and their hardpoint was solid. To be honest, they were a pretty good team this stage. Like, they came top 6, their record in Search 6 and 7, their control record 5 and 6, their hardpoint record 10 and 10. Given their numbers, I mean, look at their numbers, right? Like, for their record to be this respectable, for their KDs to be this weak, and their overall numbers are pretty good as well, which shows that, they're bringing the pace is really what this shows. Like, we see high kills per 10 for aBeZy, for 0-4, that's certainly true in control, that's certainly true in search and destroy. Hook actually had a pretty poor stage by his standards. The fact that he's lower rated than aBeZy I thought was a pretty big surprise. So maybe if Hook gets even better, which is possible, I mean, I'd probably expect him to, then maybe this team is even more deadly than they currently appear. But 0-4 is a very interesting player to me. Now, to be fair, he's not an AR, he's an SMG. And once you change his stats to the SMG role, he gets demoted down to an 80, right? So, like, his numbers, kills per 10, aren't quite as good when he's on that role, but still in control, it's rather impressive. I just think he makes a lot of good decisions, 0-4. And in terms of, like, a rookie coming into play, been pretty impressed, actually, by his tenure so far. There's also this from the New York Subliners. These are their cards. Lots of purple here. We've got some purple for Kismet in control on ticks per rounds, although his damage per 10 and kills per 10 and hardpoint are actually some of the worst in his entire role. Thankfully for him, he has HyDra, who's dropping 99 rated kills and damage per 10 and kills per 10 in control. Like, this guy's ridiculous. I don't know how many more times I need to say it. But look at this hardpoint record, right? 7 in 12 in hardpoints. The search was fine, good enough. Control was good. But 7 in 12 in hardpoint, look, they came top 4, but that's not really going to cut it in the end. And, look, obviously people are going to say, oh, well, HyDra's playing for kills too much and all this, but, I think when you watch his POV, I don't really think that checks out as far as I'm concerned. They are good at getting kills, though, this team. Knowing what to do with those kills, that is another question, and if they can fix their hardpoint, like, if that hardpoint was 12 in 7, they would have had a very different stage here, probably, and would have been a more severe threat, shall we say, to OpTic when they played them in that losers semi-final. let's talk about some of the OpTic content that's been coming out over the last few days, because obviously lots of OpTic related stuff after their victory. Also, it's pretty funny, expected really, but still pretty funny, how the OpTic guys have been going through the grueler on content over the last few days. They've been doing everything, you know, the process, I believe, is coming out like today. They've been doing podcasts, they've been doing press conferences, they've been doing their own videos and streams. Like, they're obviously doing an episode of Around the Bar, I think it's called, with Hitcher with Kenny, which is exciting. Obviously, they dropped another podcast yesterday. They did mention something I thought was rather interesting, though, on, well, Game 7 Hardpoint. Kenny's idea was, and if we look at the current setup of the game, of the kind of best of 7 we currently have, so 3 search and destroys, including the final search, 2 hardpoints, and 2 controls. Now, Dashy's thought was, often these will end 4-2, like a team will be up 3-2 going into the control, and winning on a control is probably kind of underwhelming, and I actually do agree with that. So his idea was, get rid of the second control, put another hardpoint in. I think that was his idea, and I would be down for that personally, just 1 control in the finals, 3 hardpoints, 3 searches. You know, I don't think Hardpoint is a better game mode than Control. Nobody disputes this, really, let's be honest. So, you know, having 3 of those instead of the Control, I think would be the way to go. Kenny, though, said, how about replacing the final search with a Hardpoint? And this has always been a bit of a debate by some. That's prefer Hardpoint to Search and Destroy. I actually agree that Hardpoint, on average, is the more entertaining mode. And in a banger Hardpoint, it's the best COD you're ever going to watch. But for a series decider, I am personally of the camp that Search and Destroy is the best. Just in terms of tension, the fact that it's like never over, there's always another round and all this stuff. So, you know, I'm in the camp of keeping the Search. I think I'm in Dashy's camp, to be honest, of changing out this control for another HP. That's probably what I would look to do. But I wanted to show a couple of clips here from the OpTic guys and certainly from FormaL on exactly how this weekend went for those guys and what to expect going forward, really. Because Shotzzy even talked about this, that the way he was locked in on that Sunday was nothing that he had ever experienced. Even in his Halo World Championship victory, which I thought was kind of incredible to put this event win over the Halo World Championship win, but you know, to put it over that, to put it over his COD Champs win. Of course, COD Champs win was online, so, you know, fair enough. But in terms of all his championship victories, this in Shotzzy's POV is, you know, the most that he's ever, you know, the best he's ever had, basically, which is quite something. And FormaL, right, it was great to hear FormaL's POV on some of these situations, right, because we know that Dashy's kind of been FormaL's protege in some respects for several years. He's never quite achieved the success that FormaL has done. Maybe now is the time that, you know, Dashy really kicked up into the gear in terms of winning more championships for OpTic, because I feel like the way that he performed Sunday, you know, something might have clicked there for Dashy to get over that kind of, I don't know if it's a mental hurdle precisely, but, you know, they've lost a good couple of finals over the last couple of years, and I'm sure that this whole idea that, well, you know, Dashy's not won as many events as his talent deserves was playing on his mind. Maybe this will be a key turning point for him to start racking up more championships. But FormaL talks about shutting down aBeZy, because FormaL obviously gives a lot of credit to aBeZy for how good that guy is. There was even a chance, I think, back in Black Ops 4, that instead of TJ joining, they could have got aBeZy, right, to that OpTic team, and imagine how that would have changed COD history had, you know, aBeZy joined OpTic, and, you know, the Simp aBeZy duo never actually became a thing, but it was understandable signing TJ in the circumstances at the time. But he says, look, shutting down aBeZy was big, but also talking about Kenny and just the importance of this individual to the team, because FormaL knows all about communicating well, being the vocal leader, doing what it takes to win, and Kenny knows all about that as well.
Mid-window, you heard? Yeah, BZ can run up out on the ground. Alright, you get it. That's a BZ, put on blue. Right window. Right window.
Oh my god, he didn't finesse this guy, dude.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that's gross, bro. That's gross, bro. It's such a big thing to shut down aBeZy in this matchup, bro. Like, Simp's obviously really good too. But if the way aBeZy plays, bro, if you don't shut him down, bro, the game is gonna feel impossible, bro. Even when he turns like a little bit into a demon, like he did in like the map 3, like he just guarantees a map win instantly. Because the way he plays, like when he's going in and getting those kills, bro, the game is impossible to win. But, like, don't get me wrong, Simp is really good too, but Simp's more of like a streaky type of player. Like he'll go on like a 10 spree randomly if he's like trying, but if he's just running and getting 2 every time he spawns, like just running in the front door and just like shitting on 2 people, like that's like so hard to do. But whenever Ant's beating him in this matchup, it's like super important. How do you feel about Kenny as a player? I didn't like know, like, I mean, Kenny's obviously been really good, like, when I was playing and stuff, like, he was always really good, but he's really fucking good for this team. Like, really, really good for this team. He's got really good comms. He doesn't overchill, I mean, he does overchill sometimes, but it's like one when you're feeling it, and that's like, if someone's feeling it in overchill, it's not the big deal. If they are feeling it, it means they're probably shitting already, and like you have to heat check sometimes. And I like that he does that. I used to do that too. It's good to do that. Anytime you're like winning gunfights, you shouldn't be winning. They're just getting more checked, and the game gets more easier. Like, and he's really fucking good, dude.
That's literally player game. Yep. This is it right here. Come on. Let's go. End it right here. End it. Just fucking run at these dogs.
I need a team with Australian, bro. If I'm loading up a map in a grand finals and my teammate says, "Let's fucking run at these dogs," I'm aping, bro. I'm aping. Promise you I'm aping. I'm not missing, bro.
If we win, I'm dolphin diving onto the stage.
If we win, I'm actually DMing Trainwrecks.
Dude, these guys are idiots, bro.
So many of us said it, right, when Kenny joined the team at the start of the season, that this was going to be a massively contributing factor in the positive domain to the team, and I think it's proved to be that way. I mean, since Kenny's come in, the results do speak for themselves. Yes, the league is more top heavy now than maybe it was last year, but they're not having those stinker events, they're not having those stinker majors. Last year in Toronto, they ended up top 12, right? They just bombed out of the tournament. Now, let's be real, when that team of Ghosty and Hook and Shotzzy Dashy was formed, they weren't expected to be setting the world on fire, and making back-to-back finals was possibly better than people expected. But still, it wasn't necessarily good enough for those guys. They couldn't quite get over the line in either circumstance, and then they had like a terrible tournament at Toronto last year where they didn't even win a map in the series, in either series that they played. That doesn't happen now. Like, the team is always there or thereabouts. They're always very competitive, and in terms of outside of the game stuff, I think that's what JP said the other day, that it's not just the in-game comms, because Ghosty last year did a good job of the comms in the game, and Kenny of course does the same, but it's the outside of the game stuff, like when you're practicing, things to work on, things to improve, like making sure the communications that are being had in terms of what you need to focus on. Even OpTic talked about this in their press conference, that there were a few moments on the Saturday that they misplayed, and they talked about it for hours after the day, what they would do on Sunday if those circumstances were to reoccur. They did reoccur, they made the right play, and they won. And that's the type of impact from Kenny that you don't really see either on the scoreboard or even when you hear their listenings. It's the outside of the game stuff. But it's also not like Kenny's dropping a 0.8, right? Like, this guy's dropping high damage, high kills, and oftentimes high KD for the win. So, you know, so much. I think he's been one of the more underrated players. Personally speaking, I think Kenny's been one of the most underrated players in the league for some time, and I think he remains that way, to be honest. Even though he's an OpTic right now, you can make a case that Kenny is the most underrated player in the game. It's certainly up there, because, you know, Kenny's going to be considered probably the 4th most valuable player on OpTic, but I'm not sure that really tells the picture of how important he is to the team. Obviously, you want to still give credit to Shotzzy, Dashy, and Pred, because they've been unbelievable. This was probably a step too far for me, giving Shotzzy the MVP, but look, I think it will come down to what happens at Major 4, frankly, to who actually receives the MVP award for this season. We also saw this the other day from Brian Stats, who talked about how if OpTic win the World Championship, Kenny's position on the all-time list becomes rather interesting, right? Because let's say OpTic do win champs. You've got aBeZy, 2-time champ. If Kenny was to become a 2-time champ, he would probably eclipse aBeZy. He would eclipse Slasher and Octane, of course, as 1-time world champions. And, you know, but maybe over JCap. I'm not sure I would make that case personally, but, you know, maybe it's possible. So Kenny could be in the top 10 of all time list by the end of the season, right? Because he'd have won at least, you know, 10 championships at this point, won in so many different titles. And, you know, if you kind of look at the records between Kenny, Slasher, aBeZy, and Octane, you can make a very good case that if Kenny becomes a 2-time champion and a 10-time champion, and obviously makes further finals, then he potentially eclipses these guys. And, you know, Octane actually should be at 6, but nonetheless gets the same picture across. So very much enjoyed your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.